Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Nikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
Welcome back to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Today we have another guest on, longtime friend Alex Hayes. You've been in the powerlifting coaching game for a very long time. How long? How long since you've been actually had people under you for powerlifting?
First competitor I ever coached was 2014, so this would be year number 12 this year.
Yeah, God.
Yeah, been around.
Yeah, and seeing in that time, I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of athletes at novice level, at state level, at nationals level, at world level, at everything level. Between us both, I think we've probably coached people of all different categories across the board, male, female, weight classes, experience levels, as well as an extremely wide variety of how people carry themselves, people that are absolute nervous Nellies on the day, and people that are complete stonewalls on the day and don't give you any insight. I've also had people that are slow lifters, fast lifters, just completely an extremely wide variety of just how people get to the comp day and what they bring to the comp day. And being in the game as long as you have, you'd understand that there is a huge variety in tactics, a huge variety in how you go about managing those different types of people at those various levels of competition, how much detail can sometimes go into it. Although it seems like it would be, if I saw you handling a comp and I didn't know any better, I'd be like, hey, he's just chilling. He's just chilling. He's just helping. He's just patting backs. But sometimes it's not that simple. So that's what we're here to go over today. We're here to go over a bit of chat over comp day handling and bring our experience to that conversation and see if we can inform some of the people listening to this that are about to maybe head into their first comp or about to head into their first big comp or into a new situation. Give them some extra tools in the toolbox that they can use to make their comps better.
Let's do it.
So where I wanted to start this was just a little bit of a background on us, because as a coach, I feel like you can adapt to people. Like I said, all those different people to a degree, but it's always interesting to know the background of the coach, because I feel like a lot of my clients usually are similar to me. Or, you attract people that are similar to you, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And it's just always interesting to see, to talk to people and the other coaches and get how they are on the day as well. So what type of competitor are you? Like when you rock up on the day, are you hype? Are you chill? Do you like somebody to slap your face off before a lift? Do you like to sniff all the salts? How do you compete? Or how do you view yourself as a competitor?
It's definitely evolved a lot since my first competition, for sure.
Yeah.
I think in my earlier days, I started as a junior with, all the ego in the world, but no real idea of what was going on. And I think a lot of the way that I handled myself on comp day was a lot of the stuff that you mentioned. It was a lot of getting real hype, screaming, a lot of salts, a lot of slaps, all that kind of stuff early on. But I think that was just masking the fear that was in me. And it was a way for me to actually get through the day without being an anxious mess, even though I absolutely was. But as I've gotten more experience, I am a lot more calm. And all of those kind of aggressive thoughts are internalized more. And it's kind of just it's in between my ears rather than an outward show of emotion. Although I still do love smashing some salts before deadlifts. But again, I won't kick and scream and get back slaps. It's kind of a lot more of an internal monologue and a lot more of a focused approach, as opposed to just fucking running on the platform, kicking and screaming like I did for a while.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty natural progression for a lot of people. like, I don't know if that's something that you actively push people into being, whether it's, you know, intentional or not. But I feel like everybody has that evolution to some degree over their powerlifting careers. Like, I can definitely relate. Although I wasn't like super amped up sort of lifter in my first comp. I remember it quite clearly, but I definitely had a little bit more. I was definitely a little bit more rushed. I didn't really know what was going on. I was just a little bit less intentful with my whole process.
Yeah. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about like a lot in this chat today was the idea of kind of building a routine. And like, you know, every training session, every rep that you do is an opportunity to practice the lift in the way that you expect to do it on comp day. And then when you get to comp day, things actually slow down and you can be present and you can kind of just go through the motions and go through that routine that you've practiced. And it gives you this like calming feeling when you step on the platform that you actually know what you're doing and that you're in control, and things actually go so much better when you're like that, as opposed to just like rampaging bull. You can't even see where you're going and like all you see is a barbell. Things don't go well that way. And like you mentioned, was the big problem with that is that people rush and then they skip steps in their setup. They skip things that are important in the execution of the lift, and then surprise, surprise, they miss lifts.
Man, how many times do you see it? Like going to novice comps or like local comps where it's, you know, people typically aren't as practiced or aren't as, you know, are more nervous, more rushed, like you said. Like I can't even think of the amount of times I've seen people at that level of competition who are just doing the wildest shit in the warm-up room. You know, like we'll get to this as well, but, you know, there are obviously competition rules. There are competition, like you have to get a start command on your squat and you have to pause your bench press and blah, 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 like simple things that hopefully people have practiced in prep. But the amount of times I see people in the warm-up room literally about to go out onto a platform and lift to these standards, just absolutely flying through these things, not waiting for a start call, just rushing. I remember one time last year, this is the most present in my mind, I'm sure it's happened much more, but last year where I was coaching at a comp in Brisbane, and this kid, I could tell it was his first comp just from the nerves and the rush and the everything. And he was unracking in the squat, and then it was out of mono lift, so there was no walkout. And he was just dive bombing straight into it, just like no thoughts whatsoever, not even the slightest second of you know, patience or whatever you want to call it. And I just remember walking up to him. It wasn't my client, but I walked up to him to say, "Hey, mate, just so you know, you got to get a start call. I would really recommend in these just chilling a little bit, getting your balance, just giving it a bit of thought, take time with your brace, then descend into it, because you're going to have to do that anyway, because you're going to wait for that start call. Do not miss that start call." And I remember I walked him through it. I gave him a start call in the warm-up room because I was just doing his gait for him. And then I remember, moving on from that, going and handling my clients. I'm doing the normal thing on the platform, and I see this kid go up, and he just absolutely misses the crap out of his start call. He just fails it miserably, and you know, he gets it, but then walks off the platform, like looks me in the eye, and just kind of like goes, fuck. So like, it's just it's amazing how when that bar's heavy, or when the people are watching, or it's the first squat of the day in that instance, when you're just, the nerves are high, how much a lot of it can just go out the window, and how much, like you said, that practice is important. That kind of automatic routine is important.
Yeah. And another thing is, like, when you go like full crazy ape banana mode and you just go nuts, like you lose a lot of the perception around you. And something that I often tell my lifters, particularly with their first squat, is to walk out and like touch the bar and like make sure that you can feel what it feels like in your hands, so that you know that you are present and you are there, because that proprioception is so valuable to like just having an internal experience. Whereas if you're like, you know, having an out of body experience watching yourself on the platform, which I've experienced numerous times when I've gotten too hype, like you're not, your body isn't there. Like your mind and your body are separated. Whereas if you're able to like, and I've seen a lot of people do it, Liz Craven, she goes on the platform and she stomps her foot on the ground. And what
Yeah,
that does
yeah,
is it like creates this like, okay, I am here. This is where I am. And it's a very good way of just reminding yourself what you're doing. And I think that's like super, super underrated. To talk on your point there, like I've had numerous people who it's very clear that it's their first comp. Like, you know, they're doing their bench warm ups with completely unlocked elbows, or
yeah,
they've got their heels off the ground. You know, for us, we have to have flat feet for benching, or, you know, various other things, squatting miles high. And you just always got to go over those people and like remind them, hey, like, you know, you need to do X, Y, or Z beforehand. And even if you do, sometimes they're in this state of like, where am I? What am I doing? That it just goes in one ear and out the other, and it doesn't even matter. So you can try your best, but sometimes, you know, in your instance, your example, it's not helpful.
you can't. It's really. It's not even that they're not listening to you. It's just so hard to learn in that state at that at those weights. You know, like if you're not used to it, you're putting even with your opener, it's like quote unquote light, but it's 90%. It's not a joke. 90-ish%, and yeah, that's a lot of weight to change your little routine on. So if you don't have it
Yeah.
down by the day, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Especially if you're someone doing their first comp, like you've never lifted in front of a referee, you've probably never lifted facing a crowd. Like you may have been lifting in the gym where there's people there, but you're not facing people who are sitting down watching you.
Staring at you.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience. And until you experience it, you just have no idea what it's like. And you know, similar to my point on routine, you can practice the hype routine as well. Like that's something that you can practice too.
Yeah.
So like you can practice getting a back slap and didn't like it, didn't help, disoriented me, whatever. Leave that one to the side. Practice the salts. Okay, I liked how that felt. Cool, we'll keep that one in. I see so many people getting to comp and just adding in all these extra things that they've never practiced before, like to over amp themselves, and they just end up backfiring.
Yeah, I always like when I'm talking to my lifters about this general topic of, you know, intentful, thoughtful setups and routines. Like to relate back to other sports. You know, look at a pro. You know, what's your favorite footy team on the weekend when they're kicking a goal or whatever? They how do they do it? Like whether they're kicking it from the sideline or whether they're kicking it right in front, it's the same. It's the same like little steps. It's the same little weird shit that they do, their own little dance, whatever we want to call it, the same zoning in. And they've got it hard because they've got a whole fucking, you know, stadium full of people just yelling at them. Or, you know, if you're a basketball fan, watching them hit a throw for the win on the buzzer sort of situation, like it's just so practiced. And you know what the other thing is, that it's always so calm. You can tell that guy has made that shot 100 times, and just because it's on the buzzer, and he's probably shitting his pants, you know, unless it's been you know, a career player or something, it still looks so controlled. And you see that in powerlifting, not to the same degree, but you definitely see if you go to a high level comp, people are just in control a lot more. They're not. Like you said, some people yell and scream more, some people are more chill, but like it's the same. It's the same routine. And so usually when I relate it to other sports for my powerlifters, they understand, then they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. It is a skill. Like all my favorite lifter or fighter or player or whatever it is, they are like that. And then all of a sudden like, they can relate and understand that strength is a skill, and this whole competing is a skill, staying calm is a skill. This stuff is a practice thing.
And we have it so much easier than every other sport. You know, like you know, use basketball as an example. I'm a huge basketball fan. Yeah, there could be two guys defending you. That guy could be 7 foot tall with enormous wingspan. You're now fading away from the basket from this difficult angle. Yeah. Like those are all these extra variables that are added on in competition. In powerlifting, that doesn't exist. It's the same bar. You get to choose the exact weight that you want on the bar. You're lifting on a platform that you know the specifications of it. You know what plates and what bar is going to be used. You can put your feet in exactly the same position. So really, we should be at such a high level of execution compared to other sports, just because all of those variables we control. And no one seems to think about it like that way, but that's the reality of it, is that our sport is so insular and controlled compared to others.
Well, we don't have another person to worry about. It's us.
We don't have to worry about it. And we're not fucking bumping someone off the platform so that we can get to the bar. Like, there's none of that. It's literally your turn to squat. You've selected your weight. Go and do it.
And I always tell people that's the pro and con of powerlifting in a way, because we can be so stupidly specific to the sport that it makes this skill such a practiced thing, and you can really, 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 really hone in on it. But then a completely other topic that we won't go down the path of, but that specificity can sometimes come around to be a negative in terms of overuse and beating ourselves up and stuff like that as well. But it is a unique sport in that way that training is the competition and the competition is training, sort of thing. It's not, it's, if you're a basketball, if you're bench pressing as a basketball player, it's with a different purpose to, you're still aiming to get better at basketball, but more at a human or an athlete level, not a basketball level. It's different.
Yeah. So all other sports have strength and conditioning and they have skill practice. We literally have strength is our skill practice. It's like all the same thing. Yeah. It's like, it's the entire program.
So yeah, like being rushed on the day is the outcome that we've both seen multiple times. In your experience, somebody comes to you as a new client, whether it's their first comp or not, doesn't matter, that they're relatively new to the sport, and maybe they've got a couple of these habits that you don't love. How do you teach them to be this person, this calm, collected, thoughtful lifter that acts like a champion?
I think it's definitely not an overnight process. Like, it doesn't just happen straight away. And it's definitely something that occurs over the course of like training weeks, training blocks, training years, where someone evolves over that course of that time period to become more comfortable and in control on the platform. But I think there's a part of understanding somebody's psychology, which is like first and foremost in this discussion of, using their strengths to their advantage. Like, if they are someone who is quite, does quite well being aggressive, like, you're not going to tell them, hey, you need to take a step back and be calm, because that thing is actually helping them. So I think it's like partly understanding the psychology of them and what you can learn about them to use that to their advantage. Which parts can you get rid of? But the actual like process of molding someone into being comfortable on the platform starts in training, right? Like, it starts with building those routines. It starts with, okay, we're going to have a setup that we do every single time when we squat, and we're going to do it on our bar warm-up set, our 70 kilo warm-up set, our 120 onwards, and we're going to do it every single time. And every single rep you do in training is practice for that platform single that you have to do. That's one thing. Another thing is someone, potentially using variations of lifts that do get them to slow down and feel the movement pattern a little better. A lot of times this would be extended pause work or tempo work, which I think is really valuable to just get someone to feel where they are in space and be more comfortable in those different positions. And another thing is actually just getting someone confident enough with the weights they're going to hit in the competition earlier in training. So like, if your training program is just reps and reps and reps, and you never touch anything that's close to what you're going to be doing in competition, it's going to be really hard to be confident that you're going to be able to do those weights. We've seen, he who shall not be named powerlifting coach from Melbourne, who just runs 3x5 into competition, and then that's all they do. They don't do any singles practice. And you see a lot of those lifters get on the platform and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? Whereas if you could build some of those singles, maybe it doesn't have to be a single, but it's something heavy enough that gives that lifter enough confidence and enough central nervous system activation and enough sort of like belief in themselves, that psychological belief, they're going to get on the platform and go, cool, I've done this weight in training, let's do it. And it's going to be something that's a lot more comfortable. What do you think? What do you do with a lifter in that situation?
Yeah, that's all really, really good points. I love the part of let's just go through this, like break that down, because there's a few avenues there. with somebody, you said the first thing there was somebody, if they're a hype lifter and they do well as a hype lifter, you buy into that, as in you'll go, okay, like you're good at that, trying to turn you into, a monk that just is very internalized, the powerlifting monk, is maybe not a realistic thing, or maybe just something that's just not you, and that's fine. But is that something for you that's just a little bit more like trial and error? You take that person, you go like, because how do you know? How do you know they're not that person?
I'm not sure if you do really know until you see it. Like, because you'll often see someone in training, like they're, early on in a training block, and they're just kind of chilling through it. And then they ramp things up a gear in the, week 4 or week 5 of their training block. And you can see they start to be visually more amped in those videos that they're sending you. And now performance is improving. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's things are moving great when they're calm, and then all of a sudden they're trying to be amped and it's not working for them. Like, you can see that in watching training videos. I think the other thing is like reading someone's social cues and like trying to read what's on their face during comp day can be really difficult. If you're someone who has like a good emotional intelligence, like it can be easier. But like I always refer to myself on comp day as a emotional chameleon, in that I'm trying to take on the emotion of the athlete and I'm trying to like mirror it, because that's what they need. Like if someone's really chill, like I'm not going to be in their face getting, trying to get them hyped up, because they're in their chill zone. Like that's a waste of effort for everyone. Whereas if someone is super amped up, like my energy is going to start to get up there as well. So I think there's elements of that too.
Yeah, I love that, because it's like kind of a watch and see how people perform in their training, and then you use that to guide to what's working and what's not working. And that's training in general. Like there's a lot of that across all the board.
Yeah.
But it
could even be like as simple as like, you see someone, they're kind of just going through the motions, they're chilling. Like you could say to them like, hey, next week I want you to just like try and just like fire up a little bit more. Like, let's see what happens. And use that as an experiment. Use that as an experiment. Or like, maybe you train with them in person. You just give them a smack on the side of the head before a set and see what happens. Like these are all things that you can try.
But you know what? If you have this understanding of like, this is something that we need to hone, which we both do, you're experienced enough to know that as a coach, you can start to look for this and understand this, and very early on in training, if you're taking the approach that you said before, which is including heavy work frequently. Like if you only if you've done an old school linear thing where it's like 10s and 8s and 6s, 4s, 3s, and then in the last 4 weeks you hit something heavy, you just don't get an opportunity to see if you like how you're going to react. Like when you get thrown in the deep end, like what happens. Sometimes I can start to get an inkling of it when somebody is hitting like the last rep of a set of 6 or something, and that last one's like really hard. You can kind of get like, do they freak the fuck out or whatever? Like how do they react and stuff? But like until people go to put a heavy weight on their back and go through the whole setup, like you said, whether they just change and try and mirror their favorite athlete or whatever like that, you just don't really know. So yeah, it's interesting that you link programming to the personality and kind of trying to see what works best for them.
And even the feedback that you give someone as well, I think is heavily personalized, because you'll find out a way to communicate with each person that works for them. And for this lifter who we may think like does very well with being hype, but also they struggle with sort of maybe consistency of technique or consistency of execution because of that hype, we might split the way that we talk to them into two sides of the coin. This is an analogy I use for like quite a few of my young junior males who are just like out of their fucking minds most of the time. Yeah. They're nuts. I'll say to them, okay, during the warm-up sets and during your secondary days and maybe your back-off sets on your main days as well, I want you to be a surgeon. I want you to be clinical. I want you to focus on your movement. I want you to focus on your routine, your execution. And that's what we consider to be your practice. And then when it's that heavy top set, maybe it's the last couple weeks of the block, or maybe it's just every week for the top set, I want you to switch that part of your brain off that's doing all the thinking, and I want you to just get the fuck after it. And I think what we have in that dichotomy is we have like enough exposure to that hype, but it ends up being probably like only 5% of the training for that week. And then 95% of that training for that lift is focused, it's repetitive, it's routine based, it's very surgeon like. And what ends up happening to that lifter over time is that their execution improves and they start to get to that fire up day and they end up needing less of it because they're building all those habits on those other days and in those other chances during those warm-up sets and whatever, that it's actually turning them into a little bit more of a calm lifter because they know that they're able to execute without all that extra hype. So I think that's a strategy that I've used a lot, which has been really successful.
Yeah, I love it. It's working with people a lot online. Is there? Are you getting people to film their approach to the bar? And because you know how like your lifters will a lot of the times just crop it out till a millisecond before they're about to execute the lift, which is fine. But especially with somebody who's new to the roster or whatever, it's not all I want to see. I want to see the whole process. Is that something that you?
Yeah, actually,
for as well?
When I do start with someone, I do want to see the whole setup because oftentimes something that goes wrong during the execution of the lift happened when they were trying to unrack the bar and we don't see it. And we're like, oh, what's going on here? So I think that's like super, super important. But I think the hype thing, you kind of just get a vibe of it. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of a vibe, like the way their language that they use when they check in with you. Maybe like, you know, you watch their videos with sound on and all of a sudden the fucking sound's way, way higher on those heavy sets. Like, you know that they're getting into it. Or other lifters who, I mean, my client Kate, who trained with you guys at Nexus, like she doesn't even listen to music when she trains. Like
zen.
She's super zen. And it doesn't change at all on comp day. She doesn't even have music on comp day. She's just chill. And we just sit there between our attempts and just chat. And I'm like, all right, it's time to go. Off we go. And that's it.
Me on comp day, I'll go and talk to everybody and really just like, even in between attempts, like I don't listen to music. I don't do anything. I just like chat to people. Like it's just a day at the park hanging out sort of thing. And then it's weird. Like this switch will flip in my head where they're like, I'm like one lifter out or something. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, man. We'll continue this chat in a sec, but I just got to do this fucking PB.
Yeah, I got to go squat 350 right now, bro.
Yeah. I'll be back. And then I will like try and, you know, put the blinkers on, get in my zone and do my thing. But I find talking to people distracts me from like the nerves and the anxiety and the music and the just hype of the day in general. Like it just makes it like a normal session, you know, almost anyway.
And you see those lifters who don't follow that type of approach. Because I'm similar to you. Like I'll listen to chill music. I like to be on my own. I like to just kind of, you know, walk around and do whatever I feel like doing. And then when I'm sort of like 3 lifters out, I'll turn the volume up and I'll, you know, start to get a bit excited. But you see the lifters who are like full big headphones in all day, fucking running around, yelling the whole day. By the time it gets to their second deadlift, they are fucking cooked. Like they got nothing left in the tank, completely drained. And you know, you learn that, like I learned that early on, acting like a buffoon for so long. And you know, you just figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, especially when it's a quick comp and there's not much turnaround between lifts. Not to throw him under the, I'm sure he wouldn't care being thrown under the bus a little bit, but when most people know, like my main competitor at my bigger comps was Sebastian Oreb.
Yeah, and
he was a hype guy. He was always a hype guy. He was yelling, he was screaming. He's, you know, had 15 people handling him that were just as hype as him. You know.
Matching the energy, though, that's important.
Matching the energy, but maybe over the top. in my for me, it would be anyway. And I feel like it was always interesting because we were polar opposites. And I'm not saying that was bad for him, by the way. I'm saying that it was just we were different, and it was always interesting for me to see that dynamic. And I'm sure interesting for a lot of people watching.
Go
for it. I was about to say, obviously, he was a fucking amazing lifter. So, it can work.
I had a lifter doing her first comp a few weeks ago, and she was about to go out for her last deadlift, and the girl going before her was getting just an absolute hiding from her coach, just screaming at her and firing her up, and we were just watching it because we were just one lifter behind in the chalk bowl just watching. And I said to her, do you want me to slap you like that? She goes, fuck no. And I go, I didn't think so. And then
for me,
I was like, all right, out you go. And she went out and just chill.
For me with Thomas, it was always just like a kind of like hold on the shoulder and kind of a little like attaboy, like sort of thing. That was always my vibe. Let's be real. The fitness industry is flooded with coaching programs, all using the same buzzwords: comprehensive, tailored, individualized, super confusing. What does that actually mean for you? At Nexus Performance, we cut through the shit. We take the time to actually understand your struggles, what drives you, what's holding you back, and then we coach you through it. With our online strength coaching, you're not getting a templated program. Your training program is built around you. You're also going to be getting one-on-one consult calls, Loom video feedback, direct messaging for coaching cues and questions, so you know exactly what to do and how to do it. If that sounds like the support that you've been looking for, let's make it happen. Visit our website today for weekly or monthly programming support. But this isn't just about lifter psychology, although it's an absolutely enormous part of game day handling. So maybe we should get on to just powerlifting comp coach handling in general. I don't even know where to start, but like there's just so many ways to go down about this. But like, what are some of the other than rushing and being an absolute hype monster when it's not needed? What are some of the other like really common mistakes that you'll see lifters make on the day that as a handler you would want to address or help with?
The biggest one is probably poor planning and setting expectations too high. I'm sure you see this heaps as well. I think this is obviously the coach's job. If the lifter doesn't have a coach, then it's their job. But I guess this could be just a bit of a coach conversation. Similarly to what I was saying earlier about making sure that you're doing training that's heavy enough to kind of get the lifter comfortable and confident. We want to ensure that our lifters are doing training that's heavy enough that we can actually write an accurate competition plan and that we actually know what to aim for. And a lot of times people will expect that there's going to be this magical 5% strength that is gained through the taper, or that they're going to be capable of a whole bunch more on comp day than they've done in training. But the reality is that most people do about as much as they're capable of in training, if not a little bit less. And I think planning for that is extremely underrated and extremely, extremely important. So I think that's probably the first thing, is writing a competition plan that's actually reasonable. Because how many times do you see people come out for their opener and it looks like a second attempt? They come out for their second, it looks like a third, and then they've got absolutely nowhere to go.
And at low-level comps all the time, yeah.
By the time they get to that first or second deadlift, they got nothing left in the tank. And this is even worse for lifters, that you would see more often that are bigger and stronger than the ones in the IPF. Squatting 400 plus or whatever. If you're doing 2 attempts at 400 on squat, like, what have you got left on deadlift? So I think a lot of times that planning is probably what's letting people down.
Yeah. So it's like, how are you going about putting a plan together? Like, what kind of, like, if you've got a lifter, you're coaching me and I'm 1 or 2 weeks out from competition. What are we doing to be as planned as possible, as ready as possible? So
we're obviously, this comes back to the conversation about specificity. We're obviously practicing the comp lifts to the comp standards. Ideally singles, ideally heavy, above 90% usually. There's an argument for maybe keeping deadlift a bit lighter, but you probably need the data with that person to know that it's going to be successful. And I think that's the other part of this conversation, is that it really does depend on how well you know the person. The better you know someone, the better you can kind of gauge off of their training what that means for the comp plan. But usually what I'm doing with a comp plan is I'm trying to ascertain, based off of their last few heavy singles for each of the 3 lifts, how many kilos they had in the tank on each of those days, and where sort of that top end is going to look like. And
what the realistic sort of attempt
Yeah.
selection, like what the realistic top lifts on each of them are potentially going to be.
yeah, that's what we're looking for. So, the concept of RPE is one that's widely used and it's great. But when it gets to competition time for me, what I'm looking for and what I'm writing down is kilos in reserve, not reps in reserve. I'm looking for kilos in reserve. And that's what I'm writing down. That's what I'm always thinking about. Someone's 4 weeks out. Cool. I'll watch their top single on squat. How did it look? Look like they had 15 kilos in reserve. Cool. I'll note that down. And then I kind of develop this like database for what I think someone is capable of. And it's almost like an estimated 1RM based off of looking at it rather than like using a calculator.
Yeah, I love that because it is very experience based. Like you can use a calculator and they're relatively accurate if you're accurate, but that's the hard part.
Yeah, it's
like
use some user error.
Absolutely, yeah. But now that I think about it, I've never actually thought of it like that. But I'm definitely doing that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, you should try it, man. It's really, really useful. I'm looking at my lifters' attempts all the time if they're doing a single, and I'm thinking, okay, what does that look like? Does that look like an opener? Does that look like a second? What does that look like? What's that bar speed? If we add 5 kilos next week, how's that bar speed change? How's it slow down? Because for some people, you add 5 kilos and they miss. For some people, you add 5 kilos and there's no change to bar speed. So sort of developing this lifter profile, which kind of guides, hey, how many kilos does this person have in reserve versus how much we add? How does that change that? What's that relationship look like? The longer that you do this, the longer that you work with one person for long enough, like the better of a picture that you can get on that person. And then perhaps probably the less aggressive you have to be with loading them in training. Like you can almost save it a little bit for the comp. But I think that is the number one thing, is developing that competition plan. We start off with that third attempt. We have sort of a range. Like let's say I'm coaching someone who's looking like they could squat between 215 and 220 kilos. And, each week it's like, always kind of in that range. That's what it's looking like in that range. So we set the third attempt range at that, and then we work backwards, and then we work backwards. How do you go about doing it?
Oh, that's about it. Yeah, 100%. I'm always going, what I think is a realistic, not an absolute YOLO best day of my life sort of thing, but a realistic. You can always adjust up if you're having the best day of your life. Mm-hmm. But what is a realistic third? And then from that, what is the second? What is the opener? Typically about 5%-ish jumps. So as you said, for somebody that squats 400 versus somebody who squats 100, it's going to be a lot different weight per jump, but similar-ish percentages. Mm-hmm. But like you said, also just having a bit of a background working with somebody and where their ceiling is and what gives out first and stuff like that. Like I'm always, even in their training early on, when it's maybe 75, 80, 85%-ish loads, trying to go like, okay, what's going to be the thing that breaks down? Like what's going to be the limiting factor? Are they going to, hit a hard ceiling here? Can I foresee a really hard ceiling? Cause that's when the rep calculators kind of fail you.
Yeah.
When technique comes into it, but or is it really, really efficient? And I can kind of almost just have a linear sort of, a much more accurate, most likely, picture of what a third attempt's going to look for.
Yeah.
And then, planning a second, planning a first, usually especially for newer lifters, I'll set the openers even a little bit lower than that, and be willing to take slightly bigger jumps if we need to. And then also, like the last part to all that is just through my comp experience as a lifter as well. I run through that in my head and go like, okay, if I open on that and I smash it, is that a nice jump that we do in training all the time? And do I feel comfortable doing that? Are they going to feel comfortable making that same jump to their third, or are they going to hit it, say, oh, that felt a little bit hard, and then more than likely want to take a smaller jump? Like just trying to put myself through it mentally and try and take that in consideration with attempts as well, which sounds so silly because I'm not that person, but like when you've been around it enough.
It's not silly at all. It's not silly at all, because people will. This is something that I see all the time, is that people will take enormous jumps in training and then take tiny jumps in comp.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing here? Like, you've just practiced this one way and now you're going to go and flip it on its head. Like, if let's say you're jumping from 220 to 250, and now all of a sudden in comp you're doing 220, 235, 250, like, you've now just added in an extra attempt there for no reason at all. And that might be a bad example, but
for sure. It's so easy to look at other lifters around you, like your peers who are doing, like, because if you're not experienced in it, to look at them and then go look at like how they handle their attempt selection, or like even worse, sort of like, what does my powerlifting idol do for their weight selections, and just try and mimic them when it's just not always that simple.
And I think there's a lot of stuff that you can see in training to sort of know if someone's capable of smaller jumps or someone's capable of bigger jumps. Like, you can program those warm-ups into the program and say, all right, this week we're going to try, a 20 kilo jump instead of 15, and we'll see how that performance goes after the 20 kilo jump. If it goes well, then that's a viable strategy in competition. If it doesn't go well, that, maybe a smaller jump is a better option. So, like, all these things come back to the ability to practice them in training. Like, you can practice all of this stuff in training. The next thing on this competition plan chat is that once the competition starts, the plan is in the bin immediately. It goes straight to the bin.
I was about to say, what happens when the plan doesn't become the plan? Because like
they're on comp day itself, the openers are set. You chuck them in, and obviously they can change if warm-ups are going a certain way. But once that warm-up happens, I don't look at my phone and search the person's program and check in their sheet. Oh, what have we got planned? I watch the lift and I go, cool, that looks like we've got X amount left. Let's just keep going. And I never, ever, ever refer back to the plan. Okay. And I think that's super, super important, because, comp plans happen in front of your eyes and you have to be willing to adjust to what you're seeing. Because what you're seeing on the day is not the same as what you've seen in training. It's new information. And it's the most pertinent information because it's the newest information. And you have to be willing to go based off of what your eyes are telling you, because you could be losing kilos on the total because of this preset plan, and you've missed out on, maybe your lifter was having a fantastic squat day and they were capable of squatting 10 kilos more than what you've written on the plan, but you didn't give it to them because you stuck to the plan, and maybe now they lost the competition. Yeah. That would be irresponsible. So you really have to be very, very laser focused on what is happening in front of you and make the calls based off of that information.
Yeah, I agree. You know what the hardest part about this is? That if you're over a decade of experience coaching people at the highest level and whatever else, I always find it funny how on the comp day, my PB squat is 120, but for some reason I'm having a little bit of an off day. Maybe it's not moving as well as it did in training. And then you make the logical call of, hey, let's go for 115 or 117. And you always will get that lifter that's just like, I don't know, 122 sounds pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, it's no matter how logical, I always find as a coach, a comp day coach, like I've always said to Thomas, who's always been my handler, you're the boss. I completely trust you. And I think that's really important that your lifters 1000% trust you with the right call, because emotions just mess with your ability to judge on the day. But, but that happens so much. That happens. I see it all the time. Like, how do you handle that conversation when that? So
I've actually got a system for third attempt selection. It's super simple. So lifter does their second attempt. They come off the platform. I've got my number in my head. Like, I've already chosen it. It's in my head. I haven't told them, but it's in my head. So, like, let's say the lifter's done a 280 second attempt squat, and their range for their third was between 290 and 300. Like, that was the range I selected for them.
Always 300. Yep.
So that lifter is going to come off, and no matter how it moves, they're going to say 300. Like, that's just a guarantee. So
it's like when you give people a range in training, it's always the top. Don't be silly.
Exactly right. So they've done their 280. I've watched it. I'm gone, okay, 295 is my number. That's what I've picked in my head. I say to them, what do you want? If they say my number, if they say anything above my number, I'm giving them my number. If they say anything below my number, I'm giving them their number.
Yeah.
And I think what this does is it's like, okay, it reins them in. It says, okay, here's my number. This is what I think the top end is. If we agree, then great. If you think of a number below that, that means that you're probably not as confident as I am. So we'll go with that and we'll lock it in. And I think you get the best of both worlds in this instance. If they say a number that's like 2.5 above yours and you're like, you can be convinced of it, then maybe we stretch it. But, usually that's the system that I use. It works really, really well.
Yeah, I like it because I'm sure you've handled a lot of those people where it becomes a little bit of I wouldn't say an argument, but a bit of back and forth for sure.
Yeah.
Do you ever ask them, like, how much value do you put in their opinion though? Because like there are some some lifters who will be like, I don't even want to know. Just do it. Put it in. I don't want to know. I'm not even going to give you anything. Like I'm just walking off and then you're putting it in because you're the coach.
Yeah. I think like a lot of my lifters who have a decent amount of experience, I will ask them how it felt. And I know that the response that I'm getting from them,
is real. Yeah.
I know that the response that I'm getting from them is actually useful. But if it's a new person and I'm saying, how did that feel? It's almost like irrelevant information because everything feels shit.
Heavy.
Hard. Everything feels hard. Everything feels heavy. It's not really like too super valuable information. So, I'm asking how it felt. I will often cross-check. I'll say, "Oh, are you cool with this next jump?" And that's usually when we have the conversation of like, "Oh, I want more," and it's like, "No, that's my limit," or "No, I want a little bit less," and then I'll say, "Okay." Usually if they give me any input, it's actually to talk me down from something less, to something less. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's just I just always find it funny. Like it's so weird because this sounds, but like when I go to a comp, I'm always just interested in watching how other coaches operate.
Yeah.
The new ones and the top ones. I'm always just kind of like, how do they handle this situation, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's just a bit of a fun people watching.
I think I'm lucky now in that a lot of the people that I work with are like they fully trust me. So what I say goes, and they kind of know that. And I think that comes with just having so much experience and I guess having so much success in game day situations, making the right calls. That gives my lifters confidence in me, and then that gives them more confidence in themselves. I think that's a huge part of it. I think as I've actually gotten a little bit older, what I've tended to find is that it's usually teenage and early 20s boys who are the issue with this kind of thing because they're the ones with the big egos.
They're always the issue, yeah.
And 100%. And as I've gotten older and as I've gotten into my 30s, it's like I'm like a role model for these guys. I'm not now a peer. So they talk to me differently to how they would have 5 or 6 years ago, So it's almost like a different conversation to what it was previously. Maybe I'm just at a good age where I just get along well with that age of kid. Like I can kind of be stern when I need to, or be supportive when I need to, or whatever, and kind of like almost like be like a big brother. Perhaps it's just a context situation type of thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's also like you've just been there. You've been there, you've done that. Like you get it, Like
I'm sure you feel this as well. Like being a competitor who's competed for so long, that gives you skin in the game. That gives you like this kind of leg up on the coaches who don't have that competitive experience because your clients know that you've been in their shoes. You find that?
Yeah, I've failed lifts. I've been in crazy situations.
Why is that the first thing that you said? You failed lifts. Come on, man. You've done a lot better than failing lifts.
No, but I'm saying like how I relate to them.
Yeah.
Like if somebody fails a lift, I'm like, I 100% get it. Or when they, we're picking an attempt. I've been there. I've had to make calls where I'm thinking of a very specific instance right now where I've had to go 197 on my bench press when I'd never benched 200 before, and that really hurt. But I did it because it was the right call, and it was what the coach suggested. So like I've been there and had been on both sides of the argument and understand the pros and cons, and and people, as you said, like respect that, and also you can kind of like see that in their training. Like you said before, when we're talking about the lifter psychology stuff, it's like, I know you're going to be like this sort of person on the day.
Yeah,
I know
you're going to pick it up early on. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to challenge me. You're going to be a fucking rascal. And we're going to work on that now without you even knowing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Planting the seeds.
Yeah. You can start to like the way you speak in somebody's feedback, or the way you, they're chucking they failed a lift in training for some reason, even if it is completely out of their control and stuff. Like, how do they react? Are they chucking a little hissy the next day? How are they bouncing back from that? Are they still smashing the rest of the week, or are they completely writing off and saying I'm quitting powerlifting? Like you can start to pick up a lot on that, and then you can start to bring that. You can set the tone early on the day. Like there are a lot of things you can do before you get to that conversation.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a big reason why when I start with someone, we start with top sets. Like we start with heavy work, because I want to see how someone reacts. I want to see what they do when things get heavy and hard. I want to see what their psychology is like. I want to learn that kind of stuff about them early before it's too late. Like if I work with someone, they come to me and, we want to compete in 6 months' time, and I don't give them a chance to experience any of that in 6 months. I haven't learned any of that stuff out about them in that whole period until the peaking block. Now I'm kind of like, I'm a bit blind at the end, whereas I could have gone into that peaking block with a whole lot more information and helped them more. So yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah. Like, who's this person? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah, because you find out who someone really is when things get challenging. Like, you find out the real colors,
Yeah, just to quickly go off topic on that. Like, I find people that have done other sports and stuff before they get to powerlifting are so much better at that. They're
100%.
like, they can just, like, if they did sports growing up as a kid, even if it wasn't like super serious high level sport or anything, but like the discipline and experience, the fails and the wins, just even as a kid growing up, I find just molds people. And then when they come to powerlifting, they just, whether they know it or not, there's traits that have been left over from that.
Yeah, learning how to deal with failure or losing, learning how to develop habits for winning, learning how to like communicate and work as a team, learning how to like listen to a coach and follow instructions, communicate with a coach, and like all those kind of things, man. Like without team sports as a kid, I would not be anywhere near the person that I am. Like, I give so much of who I am and what I am as a coach to the coaches that I had in basketball and footy growing up, and all of the lessons that I've learned through those years, and like a lot of the experience that I pass on to my powerlifting clients now, I didn't learn from powerlifting. I learned it playing footy or playing basketball as a kid.
Yeah. It definitely, I can tell straight away. I'm like, you've done something, haven't you? Like in the past, in a good way. To bring it back, I've also, Jordan said that you're a bit of a stickler for the rules. You love the rules. You love the rule book. You love to know it in and out. You love to know all the details, which obviously gives you a leg up on the competition, and is very important especially if you're coaching across multiple feds where there are slightly different rules, which can mean wins or losses. How have you seen? I'm trying to think of a good way to get to this because it's pretty obvious that it's fucking important. But like, have you seen any other coaches just not know the rules and make terrible decisions? Like, if you have any memories of that sort of stuff that made you go like, shit, I better know this stuff?
Yeah, one of the earliest memories I have of this was the first junior nationals that I ever attended. There was a battle in I think it was the junior 59 kilo class, and there was like three young boys in the class, and the guy who was in second deadlifted to put himself in first, and then there was another guy to come. and the coach of the guy to come didn't change his deadlift attempt early enough, and he only needed to bump it by, I think, 1 kilo because it was now a record. What he needed was now a record. He didn't get the attempt in before the bar was loaded. He put it in like 3 seconds after they said bar is loaded, and his lifter came out, made the lift comfortably, like definitely would have had that extra kilo, and cost himself, the national championship. So that's the earliest memory I can have of like, being like, shit, this stuff matters. Like these little details, they really matter. What about you? Can you remember any
good to learn as a
coach
junior?
fumbles?
Oh man, a lot at local competitions. As a lifter myself, I wouldn't say coach. No, I haven't really had any coach fumbles, but like I just to that story with me, it's funny because Jordan and I were talking about this conversation in the gym the other day. Jordan being our nutrition coach, anyway, for people who are listening, who works with Alex, and lot numbers, and how lot numbers are a thing that I don't have to worry about being in different fed, but like I understand.
How does it work then in those feds where you don't have lot numbers? Like, how does it decide who goes first?
Different feds, or every fed has a different rule almost. In that, like if you're tired on body weight and you lift the same, then I'm pretty sure APL will reweigh you at the end. Which is just a different thing altogether.
I mean, just like in a general order, like, if there's two people who've submitted 200 kilos as an opener in the IPF, the lifter with the lower lot number will go first. How is that order determined in other feds?
It's again slightly different between feds, but it's I still think it's a lot number, but it's just not maybe called that. I think APL being the one that's changed the rules the most recently kind of gets me with their rules. They've changed a lot in the last few years since changing hands and breaking off from IPL being the world. So like they've changed a lot. So like I don't like that weighing thing after when it comes to ties is something that that has changed and that I wasn't.
Is that a new
aware
thing?
Of. Newish as far as I'm aware. Only because GPC is different again. And so like, it's just, it's a bit different, but knowing this little stuff is certainly important, but doesn't come up a whole lot. But what I was going to say, the reason I was going to know was when Jordan was saying about like the whole tie, if you tie on body weight and you tie on total, which is such a unique situation that I've seen it maybe, a couple of times.
I've actually never seen that because in the IPF, if you have the same body weight, it's up to the person who goes second to beat the person who's already set the total.
Okay.
Because you can't beat the person by equaling them because you don't win on body weight because you don't have the lower body weight. So you then have to actually beat their total. So you would be...
Yeah, so it changes again.
In that instance, it's the person who goes first is the winner. So because the person who went second had the opportunity to do it and decided not to.
Okay, so I thought it was on lot numbers in IPF for some reason. But anyway, ever since that, I tied on body weight. I tied on total and was determined on body weight at Pro Raw 7, which is my second comp. Third comp, Pro Raw 8. And I lost. Because I was a couple 100 grams heavier. I since that day was like, nah, I'm not doing this shit. Like, I'm always going for the win, which is not always the smartest decision. But as a lifter, I would never do this to my lifters because like it's their call. But for me as a lifter, I'm like, nah, I'm not tying people. We're going for the win, sort of thing.
Yeah. So knowing those different body weight rules and knowing.
Yeah, knowing the little nitty gritty.
I'm the lighter lifter, therefore I can just tie you, or I'm the heavier lifter, therefore I have to beat you. Or, we had at Nationals in the 52 kilo women's class this year, we had 3 women select the same third squat attempt, which was a record attempt. So in the score sheet, it came out as 148.5. So they all submitted the same. So what happens in that situation is that it goes in order of lot number. So the first girl came up, she got it. then what happens next is that that number is now bumped up to the next record attempt. So then that second attempt was now 149 kilos. That was successful, and that next attempt was now 149.5 kilos. So like that's how that
must have been what I was thinking of before. Yeah.
So that's how that rule works in that instance. There's a whole bunch of other sort of nuances with regards to lot numbers where you could, if you wanted to, particularly in a deadlift battle, you want to go second and you see that you've got lot number over someone else, they've got lot number over you, you can change your attempts to ensure that you go after them, and just like little stuff like that. That's not that useful, but when it is useful, it's extremely useful. Like in those very small percentage of times where it is useful, it can make or break, who wins.
See, as a comp day coach tactic, that's probably the one that is the most regular. Like the whole third deadlift battle, or even second, third deadlift battle, where people are like within a couple of kilos each other. Especially if you're like how I was, and I always had the bigger pull over Bass, so I always kind of got to play the game a little bit more than he did, which I'm sure he appreciates. And it was always kind of like, we're going to put in a little bit more than, not unrealistic. I'm not going to put in 500 kilo deadlift, but I'm going to put in on the higher end of like where I think I'm going to be. So then the pressure becomes on him. Do I take my attempt thinking he's going to get it, or do I take his attempt thinking he's full of shit? Like that decision's on him. Like the pressure is on. He has to make that call, not me. Because then as soon as he fails or is successful, I can change it to what I need straight after. Yep. So I was really lucky in that I always had that on my side with the deadlifts, and it is always an advantage for me.
It is hard being the smaller deadlifter in a battle. What I always say though is like to not even worry about what the other person can do if you're in that situation. Like
easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're the weaker deadlifter, you can't just automatically be 10 kilos stronger because you want to be, because you believed it. Like that's not how this works. You have a limit. Like there is a very high limit on what you could deadlift. So put up that number that gives yourself the best chance of a successful lift, but also pushes them as far as you can. And if they can then stretch themselves and still win, then they were better than you on the day.
Yeah. It's just the advantage of knowing exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Like
so
what you need to do.
The Pro War where you pull 387.5 is a really good example of this. So you pull 387.5 to beat Sebastian.
Yeah.
His third deadlift was actually quite easy.
Yes.
So he actually played it conservative, thinking, Will probably doesn't have 387.5.
Yes.
So in that instance, he should have not worried about what you had, taken something that he knew he had and pushed you as far as he could, and then forced you into a miss because, 5 kilos more and you probably missed that deadlift, right?
Fuck, 200 grams more and I would have missed that deadlift.
Yeah, so that's a good example of being the first puller. Like you have to maximize your own day. If you leave kilos on the table, you're then sort of letting this person win easier than they could have.
Yeah, but then I guess the other side to that is like from a mental perspective, if you're the lower deadlift thinking, do I take the conservative? And I'm knowing that because in that situation, I was actually 2.5 kilos ahead. So he put in 5 kilos to chip me. So the pressure was back on me to actually get that deadlift. Yeah. I
was watching this live.
I think he made the right call. Like honestly, looking back on it, I would have done the same thing because, who knows if he put another 5 kilos on that, if he would have got it or not. And then if he didn't get it, then the pressure would have been completely off me. I could have went like, hey, I'm not even fucking doing this,
Yeah, of course. I guess like
it's just knowing where your limits are. Yeah.
Hindsight is obviously 2020.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's very easy for me to go, that third deadlift was comfortable. Like he had an extra 10.
The YouTube commenters certainly know.
I do agree. I do agree that being slightly conservative is the move.
Yeah.
But being very conservative is maybe not the move. Like there's sort of like a middle ground here where like you're still extending yourself enough, but you're guaranteeing a make, and you're forcing them to do, maybe more than you have to.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. This is the little stuff. And when you're really, imagine if this was like inexperienced people that were already nervous, were already hyped and rushing, and like all the things that we talked about earlier. Like it's just like you're talking yourself into scenarios, and that's where like the trust in one of us as a coach is really valuable to say, hey, just don't even fucking worry about what that guy's doing. He's put in an attempt. It doesn't even matter what his attempt is. It's your attempt.
His attempt can't affect your attempt, type of thing.
Yeah, but if you're handling yourself and you've got emotion in the emotion is in the decision whether you like it or not. Like it's like I'd love to say, hey, yeah, just go off what you're feeling, but it's just like when you see that other guy's attempt and you're like, oh fuck, like yeah, it can make or break calls.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing is like as a game day coach, watching the other person to try to have a guess at how much they've got left as well is super, super important. Like watching that second deadlift and going, cool, I think they've got X amount more. Therefore, we need to do this much to force them into a miss. Because, if you watch their lift, let's say it's like 320, you watch it, it's 320. You think in your head, they've probably got 335. But they put in 350. You know that that's a bluff. Like you can look at the scoreboard and go, that's bullshit. I'm going to stick to my guns here. Whereas if they put in, plus 20, you're going, oh, maybe they actually do have plus 20. So that can kind of change the way that you think about it.
Yeah, and it is semi-predictable because these days you obviously have social media. People are posting up their lifts. You know what 340 look like in training. You know that 350 is not there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like there's also that card that you have. Yeah,
we had a really interesting battle in the 93 kilo class at Nationals this year. If you want me to run through how it went, because
100%.
It was really, really interesting. So
we're about to go into like just memories and anything else you want to talk about anyway.
Yeah, so this one's fresh from just a few weeks ago. So Adam Jones did his final deadlift. It was 332.5, which gave him an 810. An 810 total. And then Josh Takua was next, and he had the choice of dropping down to match Jones on total, or keeping his attempt in there, which would have pushed him 5 kilos ahead of Jones. He decided to hold his attempt steady because there was another deadlifter lifting after him who had, was basically just going to wait to see what he needed, right?
Yeah.
So Jones had locked his total in. Takua went, okay, I need to not just beat Jones, but I need to beat the other guy as well because I think he has a lot left in his deadlift. So Takua comes out and he actually missed. And it was really, really close. So in that instance, he probably would have got that 5 kilos less to then go in front of Jones. But he obviously took 5 kilos more. He missed, and he wasn't going to win. And then the final guy came out, and because Josh had missed his third deadlift, the final guy only needed to match Jones, and he actually missed as well. So in that Takua situation, Takua was expecting that not only did the next guy, his name is Simon, not only did Simon wasn't able to beat him, he actually also wasn't able to beat Jones. So in that instance, you can look at it and go, okay, Josh was kind of looking too far ahead instead of looking at who he needs to beat in that moment. So it was a really, really interesting one because it was like so many different things happening from all angles. And yeah, like it ended up being the guy who went first ended up winning.
Yeah, but at least in that situation, you can understand it. You go, okay, I can see how you made that call. You only have the information that you have. If somebody looks like they've got more and then you're going to call on that reasonably, I can get that. I can get behind that. It's just
that final lift for the win would have been 360, and then it would have been 365 if Takua had made his. So I think that it was like, I was like, oh, I don't think he'll get the 360. He ended up not getting it.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
In my mind, the 365 was like a massive Hail Mary, but a lot of people who were in the crowd were like, oh, he's got this. It doesn't matter what it is. He'll get it. So it was definitely an interesting one.
Is he a super efficient sumo?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so walking on a fine wire sort of situation.
Yeah. His second attempt was 345, 335, I think, or 340, and it was just
Yeah,
a piece of piss.
Yeah, but again, when you've watched enough very efficient sumo deadlifters, you know that it either flies or it
that's
or it
right.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Situations like that, it's always that's what I mean. I love going to comps and just seeing that stuff, and just it can be an interesting, as much as powerlifting can be boring a lot of the times. Like stuff like that is just so awesome at the top level.
Yeah. In that instance, I'm very keen on like put myself in the lead and force the guy to beat you. Rather than like put the pressure on them, rather than like expect that they can reach and try to beat that reach. You know what I mean? So it's similar to the Sebastian conversation that we just had. It's just that Sebastian didn't put it quite far enough ahead.
Yeah, slightly different outcome, but similar decision making. Does Josh? I know Josh mainly coaches himself for training. Do you have a handle on of the day?
He didn't have anyone, and
that's a Josh thing to do.
I was talking to him in the warm up area. Like I had another guy in the 93, not really in the podium battle or anything like that. And I asked Josh if he had, and he said, I'm all good. It was so chill.
Yeah. No, I know Josh well, and that's how he operates. He's a chill operator, but in that case, maybe an extra set of eyes would have helped.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been a really good conversation because rather than just being about textbook comp day handling, I think we covered a lot of personal situations that are real life shit. Are stuff that are experience based and people can hopefully take something from and understand that comp day can be a little bit more complex and what a job of a coach does and why it's important to have somebody there by their side. And if you're out there and you listen to this and you don't have a coach or you don't have somebody to handle you on the day, I'm sure Alex would be fine. Reach out to him and get in touch, and hopefully he can help you out a bit more.
Sweet, man. Thanks for having me on.